And with that, the darkness was lifted like a veil, and the only light was Lilith's bright eyes. Looking around me, I knew that I had awakened. When my energies first surged through me, I discovered how to move like lightning, how to borrow the strength of the earth, how to be a stone. These were like breathing once was to me. Lilith then showed me how she hides herself from hunters, how she commands obedience, and how she demands respect. Then, awakening myself further, I found the way to alter forms, the way to have dominion over animals, the way to make my eyes see past sight.
Greetings, kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our World of Darkness, where it is Monday, and that means Metaplot Monday. Today's Metaplot is actually being brought into creation because of a question that was asked to me a few days ago by community member Sora Forever 20. And they said, why are disciplines the way they are in V5? That's a damn good question, because disciplines have completely been changed in Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, and I think that does need to be looked in on. I do want to remind everybody that I'm a fan with a lot of time on my hands. I do not work for World of Darkness, so I can't exactly say what is going on when it comes to why they decided to make disciplines the way that they did, but I can say what my thoughts are on it. First off, the whole thing altogether, we got to keep in mind that World of Darkness has changed hands a couple times during this edition, for one reason or another, and the original group of people who were working on 5th edition set this in motion, and the people who are working on it now are basically just trying to continue it going without needing to go, let's make Vampire 6th edition. You know, 5th edition, I think, is offering a lot of really great stuff, and a lot of people have spent money on it, and I don't think they want to go, yeah, we're just not gonna keep that anymore, and refunds for that many people with this kind of shit is not gonna happen. But as for why disciplines are the way that they are in lore, I think it's more along the lines trying to fit in with the idea that Cain learned his disciplines in a certain way, and that's why I included that little thing at the beginning of this video. That was a reading from the Book of Nod on when Cain was embraced and first started developing his gifts. Now, that being said, the disciplines that Cain learned were 9. He got Celerity, Potence, Fortitude, Obfuscate, Dominate, Presence, Protean, Animalism, and Auspex. And that was before 5th edition. Protean was just one of those disciplines that Cain picked up because it was innately inside of his new abilities. But when I started playing Vampire the Masquerade, it was the cardinal 8 disciplines, which were all of those Cain learned minus Protean. And then everything else was something that was developed due to an antediluvian. Or bloodline or some fashion like that. And I like the fact that they've made it so that all the disciplines that can be acquired by a vampire are the disciplines that Cain learned. Even later on, in the Book of Nod somewhere, it says that he picked up types of blood sorcery. So, again, those 10 disciplines that are located in the core book of Vampire the Masquerade, 5th edition, are things that come from Cain in one fashion or another. And I like that. I like the fact that they simplified it for that. And the fact that the other disciplines like Serpentis and Vicissitude and Obeah and Chemistry are all disciplines that are new ways of doing what was already in place is very interesting. And as a storyteller, you definitely can say, oh yeah, no, you can't learn that because you're not part of that clan, and that is that clan's discipline. I completely get that. However, I can also see vampires learning how to do those clan-specific disciplines due to having the right disciplines and having the drive to learn them. So I think it opens things up a little bit more, and you also have less of a chance of knowing what the fuck people have, and that's terrifying. That is so scary when you're looking at a gangrel and you go, oh, okay, he's got protein, I'm gonna have to watch out for them claws and shit like that. But you don't realize that he also practices dominate, and you pissed off the gangrel who goes into horde form. Burn of blood to shit your pants. You just don't expect that kind of thing to happen. Now, going on to things like why certain NPCs were nerfed and stuff like that, I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't really noticed much, but I haven't looked. The idea that V5 has these 5 levels of disciplines and stuff like that, and it's kind of interesting. I kind of like the idea also that vampires up to Methuselah level might just have access to these disciplines that have been given, and the idea that an elder level discipline is actually a discipline that a vampire has just gone back and purchased because you can at that level. Like an 8th generation going back and buying that other basic that they didn't buy before. Because when you use those disciplines in conjunction with other disciplines that you already have picked up over time, they can be terrifying. And there's no better example of that than looking at Oblivion. Because I know, like, I've had to stop and go, oh god, what am I going to spend my XP on for my Lasombra more than I have any other thing that I've ever played? Because it's always been one for one. It's always been, well, next level of vicissitude, check. Next level of vicissitude, check. But now I just have to sit there and go, what's more important? Do I need this or this? How is this going to help me? What fits my character more? And I like that. So Sora Forever 20, I'm sorry if you don't like it. I can understand why some people wouldn't. But I love the extra needing to think about it and the picking things apart. There's a lot of in-game consequences that can come up about that. And it's not just, well, my character has this, so I have to go in order. V20 is also, you got to realize that V5 and V20 are so different because they're effectively 2 companies making it. It's 2 versions of the same game. It's 2 different scenarios, 2 different storylines, and it's not the same game. It's the same setting, kind of, because they've even, I mean, if you even look at it, you've got the Giovanni joining with the family reunion and becoming the Hecata, compared to V20, where they've joined with the Setites, who are still the followers of Set, and have the Independent Alliance, which I love the Independent Alliance storyline, but I like what's going on in V5 better than V20. I don't know if, like, maybe sometime in the future Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition will give us an Elders book, because I think that the old group of people who were working on this originally didn't want you to play Elders. And when you look at Elders, it kind of makes sense. I can understand why people would, but the thing is, if you're playing an Elder, like a real Elder, not like, oh, I've been around for this long, but like if you're playing somebody with the blood potency to back up that they're an Elder, they're gonna need to feed on harder and harder things. That's why the old flaw, Methuselah's Thirst, existed, to show why it's hard to be an Elder, because you are going to need to drink from other vampires at that point. Hell, eventually you'll need to feed off werewolves. You're just going to need potent blood. And they're just going to slip into torpor. And they're going to end up being taken out of the game for an extended period of the time, depending on their humanity level. Hell, if you can play a high humanity Methuselah who's basically going to be asleep every every couple weeks to be awake for a night or two, then good on you. But I think that that's a huge thing to consider, is that elders just have a harder time. They are less human, and I think that's one of the beautiful parts about Vampire the Masquerade, is because the setting, especially in 5th editions, focuses on neonates and ancilli, because the elders are supposed to be so alien. Not because of their disciplines, but because they just don't have the mindset to be human anymore. When you have to focus on things that you need, eventually the human concerns are just not there anymore. Now, I don't think that there is a big diminished return on Diablerie. I might be wrong. Again, I didn't pay much attention to 20th anniversary, so there could be a huge thing, but I actually kind of like the rules on Diablerie. For those of you who do not know, because I have not done a Diablerie episode, maybe I should. So, looking at the rules of Diablerie, once a Diablerist is complete, the Diablerist must assert control over the alien blood in their system, or risk falling to prey on their victim's spirit. This power resolves as follows. The Diablerist loses 1 point of humanity. They must then roll a contest of humanity plus their own blood potency versus the victim's resolve plus blood potency. Every success gives the Diablerist 5 experience to immediately spend on increasing blood potency to the maximum up to the victim's blood potency, or on disciplines known by the victim. That's a hell of a benefit in my personal thought, but also, again, as somebody who came from the old LARP schooling of it, whenever you Diablerize, you got 2 XP, and that was it. I mean, you'd lose humanity, and you had a chance of dropping your generation, but you got 2 XP to spend on whatever you were going to spend at that point. Sometimes the storyteller was nice to say you could buy disciplines outside of your clan, depending on what your victim had. But for every success, it gives you 5 points to immediately spend on increasing your blood potency up to the maximum of your victim's potency, or on disciplines known by the victim. That's pretty freaking cool. Now, thinking about Path of Cain, which I mentioned in the last video when I was talking about that, I would say if you're on Path of Cain, you could also spend it on abilities, possibly even lore sheets, depending on certain ones. Like, obviously, if you had a descendant of, you wouldn't be able to take that kind of lore sheet. But I think that that makes a lot of sense, and I don't see that big of a drawback. Now, V20 could be completely different stuff, so let's go ahead and look at that up. Let's see. A vampire seeking to commit Diablerie must drain the victim. Okay, we already know that. Rewards. Upon successful completion of Diablerist, the Diablerist is overwhelmed by euphoria, and a self-control instincts roll is necessary. Difficulty of 10 minus the character's humanity or path rating to avoid losing control. The sensation is akin to an orgasm, but much more powerful. So powerful, in fact, that certain kindred are addicted to the sensation. All other kindred fear these vampires for their addiction. Pleasure of the Amaranth makes threats to everyone. Come on, what do you get? The true benefits of Diablerie become evident if the Diablerist feeds the victim on the vitae of the vampire of a lower generation. The Diablerist literally steals the power or potency of the victim's own blood, and thus permanently lowers their own generation by 1, bringing them closer to the mythical power of Cain. All benefits of the lower generation: a larger, more potent blood pool, ability to dominate kindred, blah 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 blah. The ability to increase the traits above 5 are bestowed. If a victim was of a far greater 5 or more generations below the Diablerist, the storyteller may roll that the predator lowers the generation by more than 1 step. This is particularly likely if the victim is an agent 2 millennia or more. It would not be unreasonable if a 12th generation neonate who drank of a 3,000-year-old 5th generation. Jesus. Moreover, drinking the vitae of elder vampires can reduce temporary increase of Diablerie discipline levels by 1, 2, or even more dots. As the potent blood augments the predator's the elder vampire several generations removed from the Diablo or its own generation, the effect seems miraculous, even if only short-lived. Increased powers. I don't see that being a huge benefit. Truthfully, I don't. I mean, there's that. I also have access to the V20 second edition, Volume 2, I guess it's called. Ooh. Where is Diablerie? I will say V20's got some nice stuff, and maybe I will do like a review on this book. I am not seeing I'm not seeing rules, separate rules in V20 Volume 2, V20 V2. I'm not seeing any separate rules or changed rules on Diablerie with this, which I don't know. I was hoping I would, but I don't see better. Better benefits to Diablerie in V20. And I know sure as hell that the benefits for Diablerie from the old Laws of the Night system were not as good as this. So I'm going to have to say that I actually prefer the V5 rules for Diablerie over most other systems that I've seen so far. Now, Sora Forever goes on to ask about Montano's lore sheet, which we have not covered yet in the Metaplot Mondays, and I'm going to get to there. But I really don't know why Montano's lore sheet allows you to have access to any level of Oblivion once per story, whereas you're normally capped at 5. I think that's primarily because it basically says that you get that little bit of an extra oomph that you being related to Montano due to the Diablerie of due to the Diablerie, or at least the suspected Diablerie of the Antediluvian gives you that little bit extra of an oomph, and I can understand where it'd be once per story. If it was I spent 3 points on this and I have the ability to buy an extra point of Oblivion regardless of my generation, I would be like, that should be a level 5. But I mean, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you on that one. I really wish I did. But I mean, I also don't see why you would be concerned about this. As a player, I'd say take advantage of it. As a storyteller, I'd say if you're really that worried about it, don't allow it in your game. Now, when it comes to a translation between V5 and V20, I don't have the ability to get you one. That's going to be up to storyteller, depending on how you want to do it. I guess the only way to actually do that would be to pick a system, V5 or V20, and then go with whichever story you like, or blend the stories, because that's the biggest difference between V5 and V20. Because mechanics, if you're enjoying the game, mechanics don't matter. But if you wanted to have the Independent Alliance come and be part of the V5 storyline, you definitely could do that. Because if you stop and think about it, the Independent or the Ministry and the Akata both have the Zemeti in common. And the Zemeti could act as a bridge between the two groups and possibly bring them together. The Cappadocians has spent there's a good amount of Cappadocian interference, I guess, or there was a lot of Cappadocian Setite Dark Age getting together and bonding due to their obsession with Duat and the Lands of the Dead. So there's really nothing stopping you from being able to do that. But as for trying to create a character that you're bringing from V20 over to V5, you're just going to have to start from scratch on that one, because the systems aren't compatible. And they're just two different games. They really are just two different games, and that needs to be under consideration. going further into the whole like generation blood potency thing, I'm actually glad that we have both in V5. The blood potency scale was always something that I really enjoyed from Requiem, and it made a lot of sense to me because it means that the longer your character is active, the stronger they're doing, or if they've committed Diablerie, their blood gets stronger, and there's something to show for it. Instead of just going, this is the way that it should be, so let's just acknowledge it as such. The fact that they have the ability to do that kind of thing, and how like dominate comes into play with the whole like, oh, you can't dominate somebody of a lower generation, but nah, you cannot dominate somebody of a higher blood potency. That makes a hell of a lot more sense, and every once in a while it lets you get away with the idea that somebody could dominate somebody of a higher generation on certain circumstances. But you just can't compare the two systems no matter what you're going to do. And it's sad, but they're two different companies that have made these games. I prefer one or the over the other. You might prefer one over the other. You might be able to find a happy ground with both. I, on occasion, when the world permits, it's been a while, but I did. I was active in the Vampire the Masquerade community for Mind's Eye Theater, where they used exclusively V20, and you just kind of have to deal at that point. I have had characters that transferred over from older systems to V20 very smoothly, and I've had characters that transfer over from older systems to V5 very easily, but when it comes to translating the two over to each other, they just don't. Two different beasts. Now, as for like a lot of stuff going on with Anarchs being like very technocentric and stuff, I can understand that, but I don't know if you're talking about like maybe Technomancy or something like that. Well, we lost Thaumaturgy. That's a big hit, and I personally think that with how loved and hated Thaumaturgy is by the greater community, I don't see World of Darkness not giving us some type of Thaumaturgy at some point in time. But as for like I hear a lot of shit about how like, oh, the Camarilla lost all their money and they're blocking themselves off of technology, so the Anarch should have the high ground on that one. It's the fact that there needs to be a middle ground between the two, and the two groups cannot figure that out. You don't have to worry about money as a vampire. If you have any level of dominate, you can walk into pretty much anything and get money. You can, like, money is not going to be something that the Camarilla are ever going to worry about for longer than a night, because anybody can get it. That's one of the interesting parts about Vampire, is that once a vampire realizes that money is just there for the picking at that point, there's nothing really to worry about. But as for technology, people are fucked when it comes to technology. I mean, that's just the way that V5 is, because the Second Inquisition are constantly watching, they're constantly monitoring, and they're looking for anything. And you really need to be able to decide how deep the Second Inquisition is actually coming into your system to be able to decide what type of stuff that, like, the Anarchs will be able to get away with. So the idea of the Anarchs needing to be a tech-heavy faction, I think they are comparatively to the Camarilla still, because they're still using cell phones, they're still using computers and stuff to try to get away with things, and I think that might be one of the reasons why I think the Second Inquisition might be letting them get away with stuff, because they're leading them to older vampires. They're leading them to harder to get vampires. So now, as for a big thing on here, and Sora Forever is ending a big chunk of this off with saying that they're very interested in knowing my point of view on detail to how this is an improvement. I don't think it is. I'm very V5 heavy on here because there's so much V5 stuff coming. I have so much that I want to do with this channel, and I don't have enough time. I really don't. I was originally putting out a video every single day, and you can tell by watching my older videos how my quality has gone up, because I've started, like, I got a better computer and I started editing, and I want to put as much into this as much as I love it, and it has me going down to doing 2 videos a week has really slowed down my progress on what I want to do, but I've also gone up in quality. I want to get through this V5 stuff as much as possible, because that's the game that I'm playing right now. That is the game that I am playing with my players right now. That's the game that I'm having fun talking about. That's the game that I'm having fun reading about, that I'm loving watching other people talk about it and reacting to that. Which reminds me, I got to get to that Lore by Night video on the companion very soon. But there's so much I want to do. I want to go over V20. I really do, because as much as I don't care for V20 in comparison to the others, it's still there. It's still beautifully written, and I think that, like, it's a petty issue that I have with V20. And what I mean by that is it's seriously like 1 or 2 powers that I don't think should be accessible to neonates and ancilli, that have become really low cost merits. And when I was running V20, before I got V5, before that came out, we had a very big multi-faction game running with vampires and werewolves running off the V and the W20 systems. We fixed it for our game. I sat down with all my players and I said, hey, this is a thing. I'm taking it off. And you know what? You know what was the one thing that they were upset about? Was the biggest power that I had the biggest issue with, which was Shape of the Beast Wrath being accessible. And what I did is I wrapped a plot line around fixing it. In that game, what we ended up doing was healing the Gangrel. Basically, they got involved in myself and the werewolf storytellers got together, and we wrote a plot line where the Gangrel became part of the Garou Nation. If anybody's interested in hearing that story, I don't want to go into huge detail for it here because I think this video is already going to be long enough. But the Gangrel were healed, and when they were healed, they got the ability to transform like a Garou. Therefore, once they got up to the point of having Shape of the Beast, I allowed people to have Shape of the Beast Wrath, which allowed them to go to Carinos form. And that solved it for me. That was me making sure I was 100% satisfied and coming to a compromise with me and my players. So I think that worked out really well. But, like, being able to say which one of these systems is better, I can't. The systems are all good unless you don't like them, and then they're not, because this is all 100% opinion. I love V20 because of the things that it offers, and I really wish there was a LARP system for it that was comprehensible to the old Laws of the Night system. I think that would be so much fun to be able to do. And currently, what we're doing is, I don't have my phone over here, but we're using the app, at least we were. I was running V5 as a LARP game before the quarantines, and we were using the V5 Dice app, which it's a great app. You got to pay 99 cents if you don't want to have a commercial every time you want to roll the dice. But yeah, you just roll the dice and it tells you how many do you win, how many if you won, if you didn't, if you got a bestial failure, if you got a messy critical. Like, it tells you all that stuff, and you can also keep up to 12 character sheets on it. So that was a very nice way of doing things, and it was a good compromise because we were using the Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition core book as our character creation book, and it was going really, really well. Now, Sora continues going on asking about blood resonances. Blood resonance are one of those things that can either be incredibly ingrained into your game or not. It's up to you. I personally love blood resonance. It adds such a level of role playability to things on why people would feed off certain people. And the way that I've seen it done, and the way that I've done it, is if you want to practice a discipline, you need to basically be feeding off of that type. So it basically makes it so that if somebody goes, oh, I'm really working on my obfuscate, I need to find somebody who's depressed, or somebody who tries really hard not to be seen, or if I'm working on my presence, I need to find somebody who's really sanguine and really into that sexual activity, who's going to help me to bolster my abilities in that. And it can also be something that can be kind of forgotten about, because it is one of those just minor detail things. In my game, it kind of comes and it goes. The way that we've been doing it is people have basically been choosing their favorite flavor and they go for it. It's almost working hand in hand with predator types, and so that's really the big things on there. It is a massive topic, and even Sora Forever here says that they'll take whatever I can give them, because it's a big topic for something that hasn't finished releasing all of its books yet. And yeah, they haven't finished releasing all their books yet. We don't know what they're planning. We don't know what they're going to give us. We don't know if we're going to get, in a year or so, a Sabbat book for V5 for player characters. We don't know if we're going to get Elder books. We don't know if we're going to get a Thaumaturgy companion. We don't know. And all we can do is fill in the blanks as we see fit. Who the fuck knows? They might release a lore book at some point in time that's going to make me go, I hate this. I don't like it. I'm not going to use it. And in which case, I'm just not going to use it. But as far as the system works and everything, I find that V5 is a lot smoother. It's a lot less jagged than some of the other systems. We tend to be able to roleplay through the tests instead of the game coming to a halt, which is one of the huge things that I like. And if they tell me that I'm not allowed to do something, I'm going to be like, well, are you going to stand here and tell me that I can't? Are you going to slap me on the wrist every time I decide that I'm going to allow a player character to roll up a Sabbat? Nobody can do anything about what I want to do, but I'm going to take these systems that I like better than the others, and I'm going to use those. Now, the very last thing that that Sora Forever 20 said actually did kind of get my gears turning a little bit, got the brain juices bubbling, which was, and after a few days of thinking on it, I can say that with the almost 30 years of Vampire the Masquerade and 17 of Vampire the Requiem, the devs could have chosen 5 abilities per dot of all V5 disciplines, since they do have where to draw from. They just made the conscious decision to limit the number of options to sell more books. I hate that it's a reality that we live in, but there you go. And I don't agree at all with that statement. I can understand where it feels like that, And yes, they have had almost 30 years of Vampire the Masquerade. And yes, they have had 17 years of Vampire the Requiem. And when you look at disciplines, especially look at Obfuscate with Conceal and stuff like that, they have taken things from Requiem and they've put it into Vampire the Masquerade to make it more better suited. They've also made it, they've taken, blood potency and thrown that in there, and they've also I think the neonate and ancilli factor is a huge part that shows that they are taking things from Requiem, because elders are harder to play in Requiem because they tend to fall asleep. They become more alien, and that's what we're looking at here in Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. A lot of people don't like it. I do, because I like that you're playing a neonate or an ancilli, so there's the middle ground of actually becoming a vampire. You're still human-minded to a point. And those are the characters that are the most interesting for me to read in books, not the alien ones. Not the ones that are so gone from your humanity that they just don't fit anymore. And I understand that other people would rather read or play the characters that aren't, and by all means there's nothing stopping you, because even if the books don't say that you can do it, the books also say that you can do it. That, like, the words might say don't do this, but there's charts in the back that go all the way up to 4th generation, so there's nothing stopping you from actually doing it. They've obviously made a conscious decision to lower the disciplines down to 5 dots, and I think the reason why they've lowered the disciplines down to 5 dots is because it's trying to make it, they're trying to insist upon elders or they're trying to insist upon neonates and ancilli. That's what the game is based on, is neonates and ancilli. If you want to play others, what I've personally chosen to do, if somebody brought in an 8th generation vampire to my game, and they're like, okay, I bought all the way to 5th gen, or I bought all the way to my 5th level of whatever discipline I want, how do I do an elder? I'd say, are you interested in going back and learning any of the ones that you weren't able to learn before? That's where I would start. And if they are not, I would say, okay, well, let's grab an older book and see if we can write something up together. And it gives us a chance to work together on stuff and come up with something that would be fun. So far, any players that have had concerns have been like, I like the idea of going back and buying the older stuff. Definitely think anyone who's playing a Methuselah, which there's no games I've ever seen who have encouraged people playing Methuselah, but I can see them having disciplines that are not listed here. With the quote here, they just made the conscious decision to limit the number of options to sell more books. That doesn't make any sense to me. Because if they limited the number of the options to sell more books, wouldn't that mean that we would have more books to buy things off of? We would have an Elder's book, I mean, if anything, I think they're being a little bit more conservative than they have been in the past, because in the old games, and I'm going to break out my old Gamerman cane here and say, in the old days, if you wanted to play an extra detailed clan, you had to go out and buy the clan book. They had clan books. They had a book for every single clan. And then when 2nd edition came around, there was another set of clan books that came out. And then there were also books for your Path of Enlightenment. And then there were also books... I'm really shocked that they didn't go far. I'm really, really shocked that they didn't go so far to go, here are your discipline books. If you want to play this vampire, that's great, but you're not really going to be able to pull it off unless you have, the Dominate Handbook or anything like that. They might have. I don't know. I don't have all the books, but they had a shit ton of books. We used to have core books and clan books and sect books and storytellers guides and players guides and the Mind's Eye Journal. Does anybody else remember Mind's Eye Journal? Mind's Eye Journal was a thing that they used to release to give us access to stories and plot lines, and it was a newsletter, and every once in a while a clan would pop up or a bloodline would pop up that wasn't released in the core book, and it would have a whole discipline that went with it, And it was fun. It was a fun little thing, but those are cash grabs if you really want to look at it. And of course they're trying to get more money and they're trying to sell more books. It's a damn business. If they don't do that, they can't afford to do more. But I don't think that that's the case when it comes to disciplines. I really think it's more along the lines of the original group who thought of 5th edition, tried to do something, and the people who are running with it now don't want to make this another edition of Vampire the Masquerade. And it's all my personal opinion on that one, because I don't work for them. I don't have the answers. And Sora Forever 20, I hope this answered some of your questions. If it opened up any more, please ask, and I will do my best to answer whatever I can. But I really don't think that they are trying to just stall for more books, because if that was the case, then I see it being in a different... I see it having a different growth pattern. I see it more being like, here's your Dominate for your Malkavians, and if you want to take that extra, here's your book on Demontation. And they haven't taken that route, at least not yet, and who the hell knows, they might. Some of us will buy it, some of us won't. But I'm happy with what we've got, and I wouldn't be surprised if we got an amalgam book later, which dug deeper into things, because we do get those things. And if you look at like the companion book, there's a level 3 Dominate in there that it's edged towards Clan Tzimisce, but it's not just for Clan Tzimisce. It's just something they themselves would use more often. I think Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition is a great game, but if you need me to help you convert over from V20, you're going to start from scratch. If you've got a storyteller who has decided that they're going to take their current game and keep it going into V5 from V20, it's going to be an interesting storyline. I would actually love to see it. I'd love to hear from it. If anybody's doing that, I would like to see it. But as far as mechanics go, I think your best bet is to just like start from scratch on disciplines and see what's going on. Maybe give you all your points and disciplines back and let you reallocate those points as you see fit. Because the games they don't mesh. I could never run or play in a game where half the game was on V20 and half was on V5, because it's just not going to work. The systems don't match. Anyway, I hope this gives you something that is useful to you. I don't know. I really hope it does, because that's really all I want to do, is help people understand this game that I personally find awesome. And I don't know, build a community of people who just love it and want to play it and want to talk about it. I am Voivode Maquette. This is our world of darkness, and we will make of it as we want. Good evening.